The graph illustrates the distribution of test scores taken by college algebra students. The maximum possible score on the test was 110, while the mean score was 70 and the standard deviation was 8. Use the empirical rule. What is the approximate percentage of students who scored between 62 and 70? So 62 and 70, those values appear right here and right here. So the approximate percentage of students that scored between those values is going to be this amount of students that I've shaded there. Now, to use the empirical rule and not a calculator or any other technology, what we need to do is take some basic facts from the empirical rule and try to apply them. So those basic facts that you need to know are these. So first, that there is about 68% of the data within one standard deviation of the mean. There's about 95% of your data within 2 standard deviations of the mean, and about 99.7% of the data within 3 standard deviations of the mean. Now, there's different ways that this can be interpreted, however. So for instance, this 68%, that's within 1 standard deviation. So that would be 1 standard deviation to the left or to the right. So that 68% is this area here in green that I have shaded. But what's not really being said is, because this distribution is symmetric, is we can also assume that the area on the left-hand side of the mean is just half of that, and the area on the right-hand side, I went to the left, sorry, the right-hand side and the left-hand side, those are both 34%, which is half of the 68. And that's just due to the symmetry of the distribution. So the percentage of students who will score between 62 and 70 would be 34%. All right, what is the approximate percentage of students who scored between 54 and 86? All right, well, let's take a look at where those values are on the scale. So let me get rid of all this that I've drawn in. All right, here's 54, and here's 86. This is the mean, so I'll put a 0 above it. This is 1 standard deviation to the right. This is 2 standard deviations to the right. This is 1 standard deviation to the left, and this is 2 standard deviations to the left. So we're within 2 standard deviations of the mean. The empirical rule, according to what's written right over here, guarantees that's going to be about 95% of the overall data. Okay. What is the approximate percentage of students who scored less than 54 on the test? Okay. So less than 54. Let's erase some of these things here. So here's 54. If we want less than 54, we want all of this amount down here. Now this is where things get a little bit trickier, because we don't have a means in the empirical rule stating less than something. It's always between 2 values, so within a certain number of standard deviations. But here's some different things that we can do. All right, so we do know that there's approximately 95% of the data between these 2 values, so 54 and 86. So from here over to here, that's about 95% of the data. Now, also we know that there's 100% of the data somewhere underneath this distribution. So every student is somewhere in this data. So what that means is, if I take the complement, so 100% minus 95%, leaves me 5% of the data. So within this tail down here and this tail up here, those are both in the complement now, that is 5%, which means there's actually, because again of the symmetry, there's half of that amount in each tail. So there would be 2.5% in the lower tail, and then 2.5% in the upper tail. But that 2.5% is what we're looking for in the lower tail of the distribution. And lastly, what is the approximate percentage of students who scored between 62 and 78 on the test? Well, again, getting rid of all the stuff that I've drawn in here. So 62 and 78, those values are right here and right there. Now, to find out how far away those are from the mean, notice that they are each 1 standard deviation below and 1 standard deviation above the mean. So this region right here, that is one of the given regions from the empirical rule. So that would be 68%.